guys, this is the virtuosa Deanna Perazo, and you are listening to Count It Out with Mike and Tyler.
Listening to Count It Out with Mike and Tyler.
Well, we are live, pals, and welcome to another edition of the Bill Apter Seal of Approve Count It Out with Mike and Tyler. My name is Tyler, and this week, life got a little bit busy, and due to some personal matters that we don't need to get in here right now, Mike and I were unable to set some time aside and record our podcast this week. So, never fear. We're still putting out a show. And don't worry, it's not going to be me just talking for a half an hour, I promise you. Just going to do a quick intro here. We're going to do some of our best of counted out moments with some of our biggest guests that we've had. I always love a good compilation show, so it'll be a nice little relaxing show. And then hopefully next week, if all things go according to plan, we are going to be joined by the owner of Barrie Wrestling, Sean Gibson. Now we're working on trying to get a date there, talk all about the Barrie Wrestling 10-year anniversary show that is coming up on November the 2nd, I believe. What a terrible employee I am. I don't even know the date off the top of my head. I'm 99% sure it's November 2nd. But either way, yes, November 2nd. Anyways, I want to update you guys on what I know you're really here to hear about. And it's not wrestling. It is the progress of Mike and I in fantasy football. And let me tell you, this was not my favorite week of fantasy football ever. Both Mike and I had a great time at the WrestleFest event, which I'll talk about maybe next week with Mike. I'd like Mike to be here for that. We had a great time meeting all the fans. And we met Kelly and Jimmy Corderas. Had a great chat with them. Emilio from Destiny Wrestling was there, Dynasty. We saw some of our favorites from Barrie Wrestling up there. It was all just a great event. Great to talk to the fans. But when we left there, we were both looking down at our fantasy football scores, and things looked pretty good. I was about 95% projected to win. Mike was ahead of my sister pretty well as the night went on. And then, of course, Monday Night Football happened. I ended up losing by 1 point. This guy came back and beat me by 1 point. I would rather get blown out than lose by 1 point. But it did make me feel better to see that my sister also came back and beat Mike. So misery loves company with Mike and I. Fantasy football this week. Not a good time. But never fear, we will rebound. I will win this week. I'm feeling pretty good about it. I don't know about Mike, but I will win this week. But alas, that is our fantasy football woes. Without any further ado, let's get into some of the greatest moments over the last 4.5 years. Wow. 4.5 years of Count It Out. Cheers.
How great has she been for the product, Samantha Irvin? Fantastic, right?
It's awesome, man. Like during the breaks and stuff, like she gets into like all the stuff that's happening in the arena, like during a commercial break on, during a live Raw. Like I know there's during a break they'll play like DX music, and like she's out there singing and like giving it all she's got. Like, yeah, she brings a cool energy to the product. That's the cool thing right now. I feel like almost pretty much across the board, everybody's bringing an excited and authentic energy that you can feel. You can feel it. It's not manufactured. You can feel it.
Yeah, you heard about the time he opened up the plane door, didn't you, on the small plane?
Jim was flying on. He didn't like flying the small plane.
I was afraid of the stand plane. It was a 7-passenger.
In that plane, we could have 6-7 wrestlers. One was a co-pilot. So we're flying down, and he never says anything. God, and he kind of just sits and rocks. He's playing cards, and all of a sudden he goes, "Greg," that voice I hear is like this. He's what? I am meeting my fiance's family tonight. Would you ask the promoter if I can wrestle early on the card?
We're wrestling in Omaha. He came up to me and he says to me, his son had gotten in trouble in Montreal.
His son was up in Montreal, got arrested for trying to rob a gas station. So they were either throw him in jail or Mad Dog had to come and get him. So we get in the locker room and I see Mad Dog talking to Jim, and Jim gives him something.
And he said to me, Jimmy, he said, do you have any uppers? I told him, I said, yes. And he says, I'm driving. When I get home from Omaha tonight, when we land in Minneapolis, I'm driving to Montreal, and I need something to keep me awake.
I said, what are you doing? Well, I gave him one of some speed, and I told him not to take it till tomorrow so he can drive all the way to Montreal and back. I said, God, why would you give him that? Jeez, are you out of your mind?
So what happened was I gave him two. I says, this will be one for your ride there and one for your ride back.
Mad Dog comes over and he's on the second match and he wanted to thank me. And then I see him back over in the corner. I see him pop a pill with a pint of whiskey.
Unbeknown to me, he took one before his match and he was sipping on Southern Comfort.
So he goes out and he's not out for maybe 3 minutes and he comes back in. I said, what the hell are you doing back here? I killed that guy.
He wound up taking both of them before he got on the plane.
Oh, no.
And he drank a pint of Southern Comfort.
We drive over to the airport. We get there and there's no Mad Dog and no Steve Olszanowski. All of a sudden we see a cab pull out and Mad Dog gets out and he's kind of wobbling and he's got barbecue sauce. They're at a rib joint, barbecue sauce on his beard, on his t-shirt. And I said, Steve, what the hell happened? He said, well, he took that speed and then Adrian gave him some kind of a pill.
Adrian gave him a Quaalude.
Oh, shit.
Yeah, so he took this Quaalude and he was drinking wine on the plane.
So we get on the plane and we put him in the back and he's sitting next to Adrian. And we're playing cards. And apparently he said to Adrian, I feel like flying tonight. And Adrian said, well, you can just jump out the door.
And all of a sudden, Mad Dog decides to open the door of the plane, flying, at 145 miles an hour at 6,000 feet. And he actually had the door open and he had one foot on the outside.
And the pilot's yelling at us, who opened the door? Who opened the door? And we looked. And lucky, it was the only plane built that had two chains holding on to the stairs and to the window opening up.
Thank God that door was chained hard onto the fuselage, because if the door would have come off and hit the tail, it would have killed everybody.
He's hanging out, and all you can see is his back. And he'd turn in and he says, it's so peaceful, I feel like flying tonight.
I didn't even know this happened until next morning. I get a call from the secretary, Mary Louise, at the wrestling office, said, Jim Verne wants you to come in immediately.
So we're going, oh my God. And we look down, the runway is foamed. There's fire engines, ambulance, police cars, all the red lights going.
And he says, Mad Dog, he says, he took those pills you gave him, and he says, he opened up the door. And I said, oh my God.
So he'd had all this, he'd had the speed, he had smoked a joint, he had wine, he had beer, he had a pint of whiskey, and who knows what else, whatever Adrian gave him.
Mad Dog was banned from the plane, and from that point on, I don't think that he got too many more main events. They were just a little scared of him. So.
When I tore my rotator cuff, there was a point where WCW, Jocko Bill Watts, was letting me go. So I told him I was leaving beforehand. I wanted my release, even though I'm going to get fired, but Jake was in my life, and Jake, who I met in my club, later would come to the power plant when he came into WCW just for a couple of months to work with Sting and whatever. And then Cowboy came in, and those two did not like each other. So he pulled Jake's contract away, and it was the most money Jake was ever going to make, gone. So Jake at some point was gone. But while he was there, me and Kevin Nash I'd freaking carry his bags and freaking get the car, and all he had to do was drive. And me and Nash got to sit at the foot of Yoda, for about 4 or 5 months.
Yeah.
And then he left, and then I tore my rotator cuff, and then I'm done. And Jake called me up, and next thing you know, he's living with me, and Kimberly said it was okay for him to stay 2 weeks. He stayed 3 months until he lost that 12-foot cobra in our house. That's when it's like, he's got to go. But without tearing my rotator cuff, without being let go, I never go on the independent scene. It's kind of like what Cody did, but different, because he already could work, but he couldn't work top guy style because he hadn't worked that yet. He understood the psychology of it, but he hadn't worked that style yet. And he got a chance to do that everywhere he goes because he was the top guy.
Let's talk about some of those compelling matches and stories that you've told. Huge part of the company's history. So tell us about some of your personal favorite contributions to Impact Wrestling over the last 20 years. Maybe a hidden gem fans can discover or rediscover on Impact Plus or over on the Impact Ultimate Insiders YouTube channel.
I think the one that's going to be probably expected, is Awesome Kong, of course. That was the very beginning of our women's division, the Knockouts division. So we didn't know what it was going to be. We were just happy that we got this Knockouts division off the ground and got a title in there, brought in essentially 10 girls that were added to this already maybe tiny little 4 or 5 girls that were in this company, and not all in wrestling roles, because there was like SoCal Val, people who didn't necessarily contribute in the ring, but had personalities, and they gave a position for everyone, and everyone, just like today, we have a Maria Kanellis, we have people who are really good in the ring. But that would probably be, the final resolution with Awesome Kong, a no DQ match. That was the first time in my opinion, I experienced magic, what we call in our business, where those moments can be rare. It's very lucky, in my mind, fortunate to experience that. So I never knew if I'd have it again. And I had that again with Taryn Terrell. Last Knockout Standing match was another one that people didn't expect. And, it was incredible to be able to, both those matches, it was, if you watch those matches back, and by the end of it, the fan reaction in both of them is what we call, from a wrestler's point of view, where we had them in the palm of our hand. And it's just magical to experience that, to have that feeling of energy from the fans, and you just got them, as we say. A ladder match with Taryn after that as well, I have to say, is on my top 3 as well. And I would say the last one that comes to mind for me is my final match in my career, and that was against Tessa Blanchard. So, there's been some special moments, match quality wise, because that's what I care about, is the body of my work. Is, because some people care about other things, what they want to accomplish in the business. It could be anything from money to matches to character work and everything like that. But for me, I want people to have everlasting memories of what I created in that ring. And for people to come to me and talk about those matches to this day is unbelievable.
Correct me if I'm wrong, Gary, but were you the ring announcer and there the night in Germany when Mick Foley lost his ear?
Oh, yeah. I'm the guy they threw the ear to. What many people don't realize about that is that it didn't all happen in Munich, Germany. That Mick's ears were hanging off of his head just by like a small piece of cartilage on each side for months. That was going on. And little by little, his ears were nicked. I mean, he and I were traveling together through Florida at a time when my mom lived part-time in Florida. And so we stayed at her place on one particular night. And when she looked, my mom doesn't know didn't know much of anything about wrestling. And when she and he had his hair tied back. So when she looked at his ears, like they were pussy and they were raw. And I remember her cleaning his ears out with I want to say alcohol, and he was he was like squealing. First we have squeamish, right? And now we have squealing. So I want you to keep track of this because I'm going to give you a quiz at the end of your SQU words. So which is kind of funny that my mom is making this big guy squeal. Here we go. And so it didn't just happen on Munich, Germany. It's just that night in Munich, Germany, the ring ropes were too tight, so that when he put his head through the top and the center rope and vaulted himself over the top and twisted the ropes around his neck, when the referee, who was not a referee that we ever worked with before, he was a referee from France by the name of Didier Guep. He didn't know enough to pull the ropes apart to allow Mick's head to go through. They were so tight, I'm not sure that he could have anyway. So that was just the final blow, so that when he got into the ring and he took that one shot and his head went back and the ear came off, it was just the end of a very long journey for that ear. And the referee, I didn't know that was happening at the moment. I was sitting at ringside, nose to the mat, because I would give time signals to the referee. We didn't have earpieces back then, so there was no communication with the referee other than my very subtle time cues. And because you lose all sense of time when you're during a match. So he finally, I saw him go down and his fingers were like a tweezer. He went down to the mat and I saw him pick something up, and I'm looking at it. I would never ever think that it was a human ear. And he just sort of now I don't speak French, he didn't speak English, but I did understand when he started shouting, "Ambulance, ambulance, ambulance." So I got that, and he just sort of like flipped it to me. So it came to like sliding toward me. I looked at it. It looked like a piece of uncooked chicken fillet with white athletic tape and hair. And I picked it up. I put it in my hand. I never, ever would leave ringside during a match, but now this was extraordinary. Yeah. So I ran back, and Ric Flair was in charge that night. And the Sporthalle in Munich is a huge, round, dome kind of building. And it was very dark backstage, except for a few downlights here and there. So when Flair sees me, he's in the hallway. When he sees me come back, he says, "What are you doing here?" I said, "Rick, I've got Cactus's ear in my hand." He says, "What?" I said, "I've got Cactus's ear in my hand." He said, "Are you feeling all right?" Like, so I grabbed him by the arm and I pulled him under one of the downlights. And he looked down at it and he said, "Holy shit, that's an ear." I said, "It is. And we need to get it on ice so that maybe they can reattach it." And with that, some of the guys came out and they were like amazed by this. And I did find the doctor. We did put it on ice. They weren't able to reattach it. But yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where if you came up to me and said, "Gary, I've got this human body part, would you hold it for me?" I'd never do that. But when things happen in the spur, especially to a buddy of yours, and but for anyone, I would have taken anyone's ear, at the time. I could have helped to save it. And that's what happened. But it had that backstory. It had that history. It didn't all just happen in Munich, Germany.
I gotta ask you though about the other big cage match that you guys did with the Dudley Boys, electric steel cage match. What were you thinking when you saw kind of like the execution of how they were going to pull that off? Because I think that might have been one of those good ideas on paper, but it didn't really work out like on screen, right?
Yeah, it was ridiculous. Let's be real. It was bad. I think it was one of those we had. All right, do you ever see the FMW with the explosion with somebody hit the kid? So that's the original plan, but somebody forgot the technician and back in Florida. I think it was Detroit. It was somewhere, and somebody forgot the box. The box was all about putting this little gimmick to the cage, and whoever hits it, boom, explode. So we had Plan B, and Plan B was horrible. And Plan B was we're gonna press this button, and it sounded like a video game.
Yeah,
and blinking lights. It was really bad. And if you look at the tape, all of us was laughing. Because the one thing about myself, like the Dudley Boys, come on, Dudley. I don't care, Dudley. To me, they're saying they are wrestling, and it's for myself. Like I want to do good with these boys, And I think that match, not that it wasn't good, I think the gimmick wasn't good.
Yeah.
The match was still good. I just tell people, just picture it with no cage, no electricity at all. Just look at the match, look at the individual, and let's see what happens,
Yeah.
And I did see that for myself, and I liked it. But when it comes to the gimmick, I know for myself, a lot of people don't want to see electric cage match, and it wasn't. It was like some Nintendo 64 cage match or something.
Who told you that you were going to be wrestling Jushin Thunder Liger in Brooklyn?
Finn Balor, actually. Finn told me. So which I didn't know. So again, it's kind of one of those things which I guess seems to be a pattern now that I actually start saying it out loud. But you hear something and you go, yeah, sure, that's happening, but it does happen. But so at that point, I had kind of worked with a lot of people. I'd done a lot of stuff in NXT, almost to the point where where do you go from here, kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And so I remember even just kind of saying, I think maybe to Triple H, hey, what's the plan moving forward here? Like, who do you want me to work with next? And he goes, he's like, well, you're getting close to working with everybody here. He's like, I'm working on something a little special. He goes, just bear with me. I said, okay. So maybe like a week or two later, I still hadn't heard anything. And Finn comes up and he goes, hey man. And he goes, you're working with Liger. And I said, like who? Like, is that like a new guy at NXT or like, who is this? And he goes, no, like Liger. And I went, I said, no, he doesn't even work here. And he goes, I'm telling you, man, he goes, he either trained Finn or helped train Finn. Okay. And that's why Finn had the connection. So Finn reached out and asked him, and I guess he was open to it, and they made it work. And he went, yeah, no. He's like, you're going to work him at TakeOver. And I went, all right, sure. Yeah, whatever you say. And then I think it was the following week we had TVs, and they told me, they said, hey, so you're gonna have this match, and then you're gonna put this mask on this guy. And I was like, oh, okay, so this is like, we're actually doing it. And I think Regal came out and he cut the promo and put Liger up on the screen, and it was just one of those things. And I went, whoa, this is cool. And at the time, I wasn't even thinking of I'm his only match ever in WWE. I'm just thinking, yeah, this is cool. And then maybe he's there now, or maybe this is like a one thing that leads to a two thing kind of thing, or maybe I go to New Japan and I work with him. Like, who knows? You know what I mean? It's just kind of
WWE doesn't do that, right? They don't do these one-offs.
That's right.
You don't see that, yeah.
At that point, like, we weren't really kind of intermingling, and there wasn't, it was kind of unheard of like, what are we doing here? And so for him not to be a part of WWE, to come in for this match, and I went, okay, this is special. This is something cool is going on here. And then when you really break it down, I was like, oh man, they're like, this could have gone to anybody, but they're trusting me with this.
Yeah.
Like, that says a lot of like where I am currently and what they think of me and what my boss thinks of me. And, so I'm like, all right, I got to make this thing good. I got to take care of them. I got to, live up to the hype a little bit. And so again, it just kind of was one of those things where I went, man, what an opportunity. This guy has worked everywhere, and he's worked everybody. He's been around forever, and he's got such a legendary name. Now to be a part of that is just, special is what it is.
Yeah.
And so when I found out about it, I went, all right, this is going to be cool. And, we ended up going to Brooklyn. We ended up having our match. And when we came back, it was just like, oh, thank you so much, man. Thank you. And we ended up, just being really cool. And I think you were talking about kind of, fanning out a little bit. I had a mask that I put on. I think I had a match with somebody before, and it was an extra, and I beat him up, and I cut a promo on him, and I put a Liger mask on him. And after the segment, I kept the mask. And after I worked him, I was like, hey, man, I hate to do this, but can you sign this mask? And he signed the mask, and it's hanging up at Flatbacks. So it's just one of those things of like, you got to do it. You know what I mean? When are you ever going to do it again? So, and then it turned out to be, the only match that I think after that, once it got to a certain point, I went, okay, please never wrestle another match. Please never wrestle a match.
Right.
and he never did. And I went, all right, I'm the only one who ever wrestled in WWE, which, again, nobody can take that away from me. So I'll talk about it on every podcast that ever happens. That's my thing,
What were like the biggest differences with working with Triple H and NXT compared to Vince with WWE?
I think it's well documented that with Vince, there were frequent changes up until the last minute that a show went on the air, even into the broadcast itself. So I got very used to that doing Raw and SmackDown, that you could hand me no show and we would just run with it, or you could hand me a show and that'd be great. Triple H was just I don't know. I have very fond memories of working with Triple H because I appreciated what he meant to so many people on a personal level. And that's not to say anything negative about Vince's relationship with so many people, because that's also well documented how important he is to so many people in WWE and vice versa. Triple H, I'll never forget. I remember doing an NXT, I think it was April 15th, 2020 exactly. And it was unfortunately a day where we're in the pandemic, we're doing an NXT in front of no fans. And a lot of people were released that day. And I was working as a member of the announce team staff with Michael Cole. So unfortunately I had to do some of those phone calls for within our staff. So it was an extremely emotional day, and for everybody, not just myself included. And I remember just Triple H coming up and saying, hey, like he was just checking on everybody because he knew it's like between the pandemic and then these budget cuts, obviously, that were happening out of necessity because of the pandemic. He came over and asked, and he was like, how's everybody doing? And I just couldn't lie. And I was like, I was emotional. I was damn near in tears. And I was like, I'm not okay. And there's often the alpha male wrestling mentality, and that's every promotion that you work with. And he was good enough to just like pull me aside, talk to me for 5 minutes, and just give me that space to breathe. So I think I definitely had I'd say a more extensive relationship with Triple H, just because of the opportunities I was given on NXT were really special, and they're just different in that, it's not that they weren't special opportunities on Raw and SmackDown. I'm getting to call freaking WrestleManias, Royal Rumbles, SummerSlams, Money in the Banks, like you name it. But with Triple H and NXT, those were grounds for me to reinvent myself, because I wasn't doing a good job and I needed to learn. I needed to try new things. And he gave me this stage to do that, to do something really great with Corey Graves. I will never forget that as long as I live. So it's just apples to oranges. So one flavor versus another flavor of ice cream, so to speak.
So if we could, Chris, can we go back in time a little bit here? And I can actually see right over your shoulder there's a picture of yourself and it looks like Bob Ryder there. And Bob is somebody I definitely want to ask you about. How important was Bob, not only for you and your career, but also for the company as a whole? Because I really think he's probably the biggest unsung hero of TNA and Impact Wrestling.
Yeah, Bob really doesn't get enough credit for everything he's done for the promotion and even coming up with it. I mean, he helped. He helped create TNA. It was a brainchild of his, and then they got with Jeff Jarrett, and they came up with it. And then Storm and I were there since day one, and Bob was probably our biggest supporter. I think they would have wound up using us, which they did, but they just didn't know what direction they wanted to go or what to do with us. And Bob was one of the guys that, or the guy that said, you got to do something with these guys, take a look at them, and they could really be something big. So, and then over the years, I mean, Bob's outside of the ring, but Bob's become one of my best friends, and he's always been there for us. Whether it's the business or outside of the business. So we're gonna miss him a lot.
So you kind of mentioned the WWE Hall of Fame a little bit.
Yes.
Is that something? Do you think this is something that can be achievable now? We've got the new regime in there. You've got your dad's got this whole great new reputation going, and this it's almost like a second coming of your dad. He's got like all this new merchandise out, and his matches are being watched again. He's getting inducted in these other things. Is there kind of like some momentum going there? Do you think it's something that's a reality?
I think so. I sure hope so. Every year I watch, when they announce who they're going to induct, and it's like, well, who's left? I'm like, come on, the British Bulldogs, or just my dad on his own, either or both. Like, we still have those coming. So, I'm just hoping that manifestation kicks in.
Yeah, I'm going to join you in that manifestation as well, because he's so deserving of it. He inspired everybody. Like you see his fingertips all over the product now. So let's play a little hypothetical game. I'm gonna put you on the spot here, okay? So your dad, you guys get the phone call. Triple H says, we're putting your dad in the Hall of Fame this year. You and your mom will be there. You're going to, do the acceptance speech. But who would you like to see induct your dad? Who do you think makes sense to induct your dad into the Hall of Fame?
Honestly, probably my Uncle Brett.
I think so too.
Yeah. He is well-spoken. He's a great writer. He had so many young matches with him back in like Stampede Wrestling. They traveled the world together, Japan and WWE. So yeah, I'd like to see it be him.
Yeah, I think that's
I'm sure his
perfect.
speech would make me cry because he's an amazing writer. So
Well, I mean,
Oh yeah, absolutely. I didn't find out till probably 45 minutes before it happened.
No
It
shit.
was it was like around intermission during that show that I found out. Because Paul was he was infamous at not telling people, because he didn't want things to get out to the dirt sheets and so forth. So I didn't find out till about 45 minutes till I went out there. So I was totally caught by surprise. I did not know I was winning the title at all. To me, it was just another night. I saw I was like, oh, I'm not on the card tonight. That kind of is weird. Lo and behold, I was winning the world title. But yeah, it was really cool. I didn't win any title, I didn't win anything, it's not real, so I'm not pinning anybody. But why it was so significant to me is this is one of the top promotions in the entire world. It's number 3 in the United States because, back then it was AWA, WCW, WWF. And, AWA, the old AWA went away, and we were like the third promotion that recognized a world title. So for me to be on top of a promotion that was featured on pay-per-view, that was featured on television, it's like I was in the conversation with some of the greatest in the business. So for me, it was like Paul showed he had faith in me to draw and to create memorable matches, memorable angles, and to really toe the line for ECW. You know what I mean? So that's what it meant to me. It wasn't about me being a mark for the belt. It was that Paul trusted me to carry that end of the business, so to speak, if that makes any sense.
No, absolutely. And it's got to feel nice to get your work rewarded as well, right?
It's amazingly rewarding, and to this day I'm very grateful.
And that's classy Freddie Blassie. And I understand Fred was a big supporter of the Dudley Boys. I'm a huge Freddie Blassie fan, and I don't get to hear enough stories about Freddie. Can you share some memories of being around Freddie?
Well, Freddie definitely said what he wanted to say, when he wanted to say it, and how he wanted to say it. I think one of the greatest thing was when we were on stage. This is way before doors had opened, and we were going over our stuff with him, Steve Austin, and Eric Bischoff. And I believe it was just me, Vince, and Bubba. We were right there waiting for Austin and everybody else in the group to come. And Bischoff was standing right next to us, and Freddie didn't care. Freddie thought the Monday Night Wars was still going on at this point. And what the hell is that pencil neat geek doing there? And blah, blah, fuck him. Excuse my expression, but F him, blah, blah, blah. I never liked him in the first place. That's why we took you out of business. And me and Bubba was like, whoa. we just looking at it as Freddie Blassie. What are you going to do? And Vince looked at Bischoff, I remember, and just went. And Bischoff was like, he understood, but man, Freddie was still cutting like a knife. Everything he said, it made me cringe. I was like, oh my God, Bischoff is right here. He just did not care. And when he got on Hogan, that was even worse. Because him and Hogan, he was Hogan's manager when he first came in. And I guess Freddie took to heart when Hogan left and went to WCW, He had, Freddie Blassie was loyal. He was one of the most loyal men you'll ever meet. And with that being said, it was almost like, he didn't care, if the Monday Night Wars were over, or whether he even knew that the Monday Night Wars were over. He just didn't care. He just went after them.
Oh my gosh, it's legit life altering. Like Scott's the type of person that he carries himself in such a way where it's respectable, and you want to carry yourself in a similar way. You know what I mean? Like he's earned so much respect, and he's earned so much, just like, don't even know how to express, but like he's where he's at in his position in wrestling. It doesn't matter with what happened in TNA. He didn't lose any position. The way that he treats people outside of wrestling, it's a way that I strive to treat people. He's got one of the biggest hearts of anyone I've ever met. People that fall in hard times, that have been close to him, that have needed help. I'm sure you saw on the Chris Van Vliet show, like he talked about a time where he struggled. And I feel like that's why he's able to relate to people. Like people think this, Scott's been rich his whole life and never had to struggle or anything like that. Like, no, like Scott's known struggles lots, and he can very much relate to that. And now that he's in a position where he's able to help people, he likes this the exact same way. He gets that joy and fulfillment from helping people and seeing them grow. And there's definitely those proud dad moments for him where he's got all of these, people underneath him. Scott has so many kids, even though he doesn't have like a biological kid, he's got so many kids that look up to him and call him dad because of everything that he's been able to do for people. So I got to say that my relationship with Scott has been invaluable, and it's made me a better person for sure.
And what a great storyteller he is too. I could have listened to him on Van Vliet. I know they went like two hours, something like that. I felt like it was 20 minutes. Like he's just such a fantastic storyteller.
It's true. It's true. I was listening to it at work when I was just doing my shift, and before I knew it, it was already break time. I'm like, oh my gosh, wow, that was really interesting. Holy geez. And I got to say, one of the things that I want to bring up is I'm so proud about Scott's drive to showcase Canadian wrestling with what he talked about of how hard it is to break into the mainstream and into the American media for some of us Canadian talents. Like the fact that he's taking the lead on that and trying to really showcase Canadian talent. I couldn't be more proud to be a part of what's going on there with Maple Leaf.
Well, and that's one of the main reasons why Mike and I, we were such big and are still such big supporters of TNA wrestling, because that was really the promotion that was showcasing a lot of Canadian talent. We had people like Josh and Ethan Page, and now Jody Threat's on there, and there's a handful of others that I can't think of off the top of my head, but they got that opportunity to show, because I think Canada and Ontario specifically, I will be very biased and opinionated on this, however, but I think that we're like this unplucked, like gold mine of talent. We're spoiled here in Ontario.
Yes, definitely. We have a lot of talent that I feel, and this is one of the goals, I think, of Maple Leaf Wrestling. And I think it's one of the goals that each of us should be setting to us that's part of this, is Canadian wrestling is on par with anything around the world when it comes to wrestling. And I feel that anybody, if you're on this Maple Leaf show, it's because Scott really truly feels that you belong on par with anybody that's out there, not just in Canada, but across the world. So I feel like what he's really desiring to showcase here is that not only do we have some of the best wrestlers in all of Canada that are going to be gathering in Windsor on the 19th and 20th for this one show, it's some of the best wrestlers that the world has to offer. It's going to be one of the best wrestling shows that the world has to see. And he's presenting it in that case, in that form.
Well, and right before we started recording, the announcement just went out of the huge main event that we're going to be seeing: Josh Alexander against Takeshita, TNA Wrestling against AEW Wrestling. How cool is that we're getting that? Yes. What a match.
And on sale as we're recording today, Monday the 26th.
That's
So-
right. So this will be released on Thursday. So grab your tickets now while you can get them, because this is going to be a hot crowd. St. Clair College is a great venue with that's had some great moments in Canadian wrestling history. Mike and I are planning. We're hoping it's really close to my wedding date, so I'm hoping that I can maybe get some brownie points with the wife leading up to that and sneak up to the show. But we'll see. But that's our plan. Who's who of
Right. Oh,
talent.
honey, Windsor, come on.
Yeah, it's not too bad. We're only up here in Barrie, so it's not too bad. We can make it. We can make it even for one night, even for one night. But I just love not only like the branding that we're doing here at Maple Leaf Pro Wrestling, but the throwback to the history of these video clips from the Tunney days that, there's not a lot of that footage left around, and Scott's really doing a great job of showcasing it and mixing the past and the present. What are your thoughts overall on the early stages of Maple Leaf Pro?
Well, it's one of the things that I'm very, very proud of, because there is a rich history when it comes to not only just Maple Leaf Pro Wrestling, but Canadian wrestling in general. And Scott wants to showcase that history that, we can't overlook how important Canadian wrestling has been to the overall scene. You know what I mean? Like how Stampede Wrestling and how Maple Leaf and like all these things that were around back before WWE was as prominent as it was. These were the avenues to see some of these top stars. Like we've put out some of the footage of Bret Hart and Ric Flair and Angela Mosca, like all these people, these huge names that you wouldn't have an opportunity to see. And that's kind of even the goal, is to try and hopefully we can bring everything back up to that point where it's like, yeah, when you want to see these top stars integrate, this is going to be the place to see that, as Maple Leaf Pro Wrestling.
Absolutely. And I know it's just was talk on the Van Vliet show, but when Scotty was talking about looking at that old Maple Leaf Garden, I got goosebumps, man. Like if that's the end goal, or if that's something that he's working towards, like that will be an incredible can't miss show for sure. So I just want to keep that manifesting that into the universe, that maybe that's the goal after we get these first shows out of the way at St. Clair College, right?
Oh, I hope so. Honestly, I'm not gonna lie. I've never heard like that. I've never heard the exact plans, but it's been manifested so many times by so many people that if it doesn't happen, it's almost gonna be disappointing in a way.
A little bit.
But with what's going on, I don't think there's anything that could really disappoint. Like, to tell you the truth, like as Scott said, we're gonna be able to focus on this show here, and then after we hit this home run, this Grand Slam, this 8-run home run that we're going to hit here on October 19th and 20th, then we can refocus, and then we can try and, see where our chips fall, as they like to say.
It's so true. And, and the time. And I kind of just want to talk about the last 12 months that you've had, the ups and the downs that you've gone through. And now you're sitting here as the Impact World Champion. Does this title reign mean something a little bit more special to you after the last year that you've had compared to any of the other ones?
It is pretty special. It is pretty dang special. And I say that because I feel like a lot of people thought that Mickie James was done. And I think that, I really didn't get a chance to show what I could be as a champion in the years prior. I was just more, and I lost. So I felt like it's weird that it would happen, but even in going back to WWE this last time, I almost lost a sense of myself and forgot who I was, and in a sense, and my self-confidence had really started to suffer, and I think that's one of the biggest things, and I'm getting emotional, but one of the biggest things that I'm most grateful for is to have my power back and my confidence back, and that reminder of, Mickie, you're a damn badass, and don't ever let anyone make you think otherwise, because I never felt that way in the locker room. Any locker room I've been in, the girls have always been respectful. And I think the biggest difference in the locker rooms now than 10 years ago, and especially when I first got into wrestling, is that the women are getting into the business to be wrestlers. They're getting into it because they're fans of wrestling, and they're fans of women like myself, like the Beth Phoenixes, like the Litas and the Trish Stratuses, because that was who was on television when they were coming up, just like Sherry was for me, and Luna Vachon and Alundra Blaze, and all these women were for me. We were that inspiring story that those women now who are shining really looked up to. And I was like, well, God, what a great job we all did. Because now they're going out there and being able to do so many more things. And it's cool because the competition's a lot quicker because they're all training to be wrestlers, you know, instead of just kind of being thrown in that position because they were a valet or whatever the case may be. So, yeah, it's cool. And it's nice to have my power back. It's nice to have my confidence back. It's nice. I've spent a career proving people wrong, and I'm sure that I will spend the rest of it doing just the same, but I like to be right.
I'd love to talk about Mickie a little bit and just how important she's been to your career with all these legendary matches that you guys have had over the last year.
Yeah, I think, you know, I get asked this all the time, just because Mickie's so like polarizing, right? She's been wrestling 20 plus years. She's done it all. And I think that having someone with that experience, you know, and I was actually talking to her the other day and I said, you know, if you give someone advice or you say, I like this better, or what about this? And we tweak this, like, how could I ever argue that you're wrong? The experience is there and is proof itself that it works. And I can't ever tell you, no, you're wrong, because you've been there, you've done it, you've been successful, you've made money. So having that kind of leader in the locker room, I think for me has been game changing, but I think for everyone in our knockouts division, in our knockouts locker room can learn something when they're in the ring with Mickie, sitting in the back, just shooting the shit with Mickie, you know, like, we're all gaining valuable professional and life experience from being around someone like Mickie James. So it's, like I said, been game changing for me.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, not only just getting that advice backstage, but actually being in the ring with her. What's the biggest takeaway that you've gotten personally from all of your incredible matches with Mickie?
I think that, you know, and again, this is a similar question I get asked a lot. It's just that she's done everything, right? So the important little details of the storytelling that she thinks are like, this is key to what we're doing, has been game changing for me, and has just changed my mind of what I think is important. And I've really learned how to like hone in on the storytelling and not necessarily think of like what big moves can I do and what is going to get people talking. It's like the story is going to get people talking. The story is what got us to be the first ever Knockouts World Championship pay-per-view main event. The story, not the Mickie DDT, not the Fujiwara armbar. The story and the hatred between the two of us. So I think picking her brain has been the most interesting for me to learn from of what is the best story we can tell and how do we get to what our end goal is, and keep it coherent and allow people to follow along.
A big night in Cincinnati. You got to face off against Max Caster. You're in the ring with Jon Moxley, another Cincinnati guy at the end of the night. How cool was it for you to have that moment in front of your home people?
Oh man, that was like, you know, top 3 best days of my life. You know what I mean? Like that was a full circle moment for me. Finally getting to show all my friends and family that, you know, I'm operating on this larger stage and that we have such a cool fan base and such a cool sport with AEW to come check it out and see what's going on, you know, like. And then people loved it. You know, a lot of my friends came out, a lot of my family, and it was a whole show. You know, I got a whole match earlier on in the show, a nice win on Rampage. He comes out and we do that. Oh no, sorry, not earlier on in the show. Earlier on in the show, I had the promo segment on Dynamite with MJF, you know, to kind of set me up with a nice little match. And then I did the match with MJF and Arthur Ashe. So a really good little series of content for me, and to get my feet wet out there on TV. Get a microphone in my hand. I mean, you know, even ever since that night, they've always trusted me with the microphone and like to put me in those situations where I can talk. So I think I've proven myself as far as the promos go, and the matches are even coming along too. And Moxley, just like, you know, so much credit to him for, you know, carrying the city on his back for so many years. And he just moved back to Cincinnati from Vegas, so he's back home and stuff. So for him to come out there and share that moment with me when he's like the most, you know, over guy from our town ever, like that was very special to me. So I have a lot to thank for him for that.
You had what we called on this show possibly the best match of the year in 2001 against our fellow Canadian Josh Alexander in an amazing Iron Man match on Impact. How hard is it working with a guy like that, knowing you're making magic, but in front of an empty arena?
It's tough, and I guess depending on your upbringing in the business, it's tough, it's that kind of depends on how tough it is. For a lot of guys, to be honest, I feel like the pandemic era for any of these shows, like I don't think it was as hard as a lot of people might think it would be for a lot of guys, because a lot of guys in newer generations are not sort of raised to do their stuff in the ring.
Right.
And so they're going out there with preset calls and things that they want to do. And so I feel like it was almost easier to do that. I know a lot of guys have sort of admitted since then that it was a lot easier. It wasn't as much fun because you don't get that energy from the audience, but it was easier to do their work. But for somebody like me that's more old schoolish, like I don't go in with that many things preset. I go in almost with a blank slate because I was always taught the opposite. Like, right. So to not have that element was very different for me. So, that was a little tough. I've never been an energy guy. Like, I don't get nervous. I don't get anxious, and I don't really get adrenaline. So not having an audience didn't play a factor as far as like, an energy level, like being able to do any of this. I've always been steady-handed, regardless. So that didn't really bother me at all. The hardest part was that it was formatted for television. That was the hardest part. Right. If there's any performers listening to this, then especially performers that have gone on to like sort of like the highest levels, like you'll know like that it's hard to do to perform for TV. It's like going from high school or college to the NBA, and it's like at that point it's not even about basketball. Like it's about managing like a sports television show almost, because there's so much other layers to the game. And so like, for an Iron Man, if you do 10 minutes in the ring, you might have one commercial break, and you have to factor that into your work. So if you're doing 60 plus minutes, and I think we did, I don't know, I'm going to roughly say 65, might be a couple more, a couple less. Cause I know we went to overtime. So it was a little over an hour. Yeah. So that's 7 commercial breaks that I had to sort of manage while wrestling a very physical guy. I mean, Josh is no joke. I mean, he's the greatest Canadian wrestler I've ever been in the ring with. And obviously there's Canadian legends I just haven't been in the ring with, but I'm confident saying that someday when Josh retires, for people that have been in the ring with him and watched him, he'll go down close to that same level as a performer as far as his capabilities. He's very good, very physical, and you definitely feel it when you're wrestling him. So, which I like, but over the course of an hour, that can be kind of tough.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, it was a lot of fun because you're in there with a buddy. He's the type of guy that we trust each other to punch each other in the nose, man. I mean, we have that sort of relationship, and that was great. It was just logistically, it was a tough night to be a quarterback for me.
Since we're talking about great family moments for the Hart family, I do have two follow-up questions. We're going to start with something that's really near and dear to Tyler and I as Canadians. We're big fans of the Canadian Stampede pay-per-view from 1997.
Hell yeah!
Can you fill us in? What's that date like for you guys? I know you were young. You had to be like, 17, I guess. And you're not working for the company, but what's it like being there? And what was the atmosphere like in the ring after the show when the whole family was out there?
Those entrances. Oof.
Man, those entrances, like, that's art to me. Those entrances. Yeah. I watch it back. Like I watch it back. I don't know if it's because of my injury or just my age or both, but I'm like more emotional now as I'm older, and like especially sentimental things. And like I in a good way, but I can't watch that. I can't watch those entrances without like tearing up.
Mm-hmm.
I think those entrances are art, and I think like it's done so perfectly. And each guy that comes out like gets a little bit bigger reaction. Like it's so crazy. And then there's like, it's just like, it was done so perfectly how like their entrances are just that top and they all like meet up there and walk down for this, like this gunsling, this 5-on-5 like showdown.
Yeah.
It's so perfect, man. But you have you have Owen, Davey, Jim, and Pillman out there. And then before Brett's music, there's this little bit of a lull, this pot, and you feel the building start to rumble. Like I'm getting goosebumps talking about it because like I get very emotional when I watch the match. It's the deep dive is on the other side is that it's kind of the last time the Hart family is like all together like as one like amazing cohesive unit is literally like that. There's a big after that pay-per-view there's a big party at Stu's, and it was amazing. And so like that's like. And then that's kind of the last time the family's all together like that. Because then after that is the screw job, then it's WCW. Then, everyone's on different schedules. And then Owen's passing, and then just mayhem. But man, I just remember like being at the building all day. I remember like Mick Foley remembered our names. I always talk about that with him. He remembered our names from the last time WWE had been in Calgary was the live event we wrestled at the Saddle Dome in October 96. Now this is July 97. So I remember Foley's like, "Hey, are you guys wrestling on the card tonight?" Obviously he's kidding, but I just remember being like, "Damn, they know Mankind knows who I am. He knows my name. How do you know my name's TJ?" Whatever. But yeah, man, it was unbelievable. And then like the roller coaster of that match. I'm sitting front row with Harry. And throughout the show, we were like obviously talking back and forth. But during that match, the crowd is so loud, we literally can't hear each other. It was nuts. It was like deafening. And then when I think Bruce is the one who kind of opens the railing and then once Ted comes across, then like Harry and I knew like we're coming in the ring too. Like it's on. And like that wasn't planned. That just happened. That was not like, hey, and then at the end everyone gets in the ring. It just literally just happened.
Wow, that's cool.
Yeah, that was not planned. That was Bruce. Like I said, I'm pretty sure Bruce or Wayne open up the railing and kind of let Ted in, and then everybody comes in. Like that's why like I watch it back a whole bunch of times, but like Natty comes in later. She's not sitting front. She's further back. This was not some planned thing that, hey, and then after the match, the whole family comes in the ring. That was not planned. I think the plan was like Austin comes and gets attacked and does the police stuff and gets taken away, which they did all that. I think that's it. Not, hey, then since we're in Calgary, the Hart family takes over as always.
I like that Stu got involved in the finish too, and they
hell
yeah, he probably got a kick
that was
out
so
of that.
funny. There was a Stu chant during the match too. Like it was cool.
When the night that Jerry Lawler showed up at the ECW arena and just the crowd heat that you guys got, they hated you guys. Do you have any fun memories from that night?
It was incredible. I don't know. It hasn't happened dozens of times, but it's happened more than once. This could have possibly, probably not. It was one of the first times anyway that I was part of a intentional lights out kind of thing where you turn the lights out and then it's just raw energy while the lights are out. And I could just feel and hear and it's better when you can't see that good. Sometimes the lights don't work that good and they try to put it out. And it's like, we see the guy running up, dude. But anyway, that was one of those things. And the lights came on and just everyone screaming. And how unexpected was. I always loved that about ECW. And that's really what Extreme was about, which I had to experience firsthand. The first show I went to in Philly, I thought, wow, like they totally had the crowd going crazy. They busted their nut. There's no way they're going to be able to outdo that. And when they came back, they outdid it. And that's what I understood. That's what it was about. Not holding back, giving all you got now and just coming up with more later. And I just loved it, you know, and being on that drive in that part of my career, that was all just like so awesome. So that was a great year. And it was cool that during that particular angle that they were looking at me like I was an outsider because they thought that I had signed with WWE. Why else would I be on their TV and with Jerry Lawler? And at the same time, WWE looked at me like I was an outsider because they thought that I was with ECW. So I had no home, and it was fun. It was nice to have all eyes on me, and it was a fun moment. So that was cool. And there was some legitimate heat between Paul and Jerry. So having Jerry at the arena, at least allegedly, was kind of a big deal of Paul putting business first. And that, you know, for anyone that cares about that, had its own wow factor.
You are listening to Count It Out with Mike and Tyler.